Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We're presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got good friend of the program, Tony Jones, on the show. We are going to talk about two subjects here. The first one, we got to talk about SpitGate from last night. Rajon Rondo decides to, I think that there's proof now, spit in Chris Paul's face, leading to a fight that involves Brandon Ingram utilizing his 7'5" wingspan in a way that it probably shouldn't be utilized. Then we're going to talk about the game of the 5-day-old NBA season. Holy shit, the NBA season is somehow only 5 days old. The Warriors and the Jazz game from Friday night. Tony was there. He covered the game. Be really good, I thought, to get his perspective on two teams that I think are going to be down to the wire in the Western Conference playoffs. And then finally, I'm going to ask Tony about a couple guys that have caught his eye, younger players in their rookie seasons, because this rookie season has started so young. And then this is a two-part podcast, as you saw in the title or in the description that you read. Chris Stone is going to come on later on, and we're going to talk about NBA draft wings. So, Tony, with that long-winded introduction, how are we doing?
I mean, listen, am I a friend of the show or am I a regular right now? Like, this is really, this is really great.
It's really special. It's really special. I'd say you're both. I mean, a friend of the show, regular, whatever you want to call it. I will give you the ability to label our relationship, Tony.
I mean, this is your barbecue, man. It just tastes good. It tastes good.
So last night to set the scene for everyone as this entire thing is kind of unfolding. So the Lakers and the Rockets were in the middle of what I would call a pretty contentious game. Like, there were quite a few moments that seemed to spill over. And like, by the way, I watched this game again this morning because last night I decided to watch Ohio State lose by 29 to Purdue, and then in my sadness bake a cake instead of just watching this game. And really, I figured that the Lakers would lose, and I figured Houston would run away with it a little bit because Houston's just way far ahead. Obviously not what happened. This game was pretty contentious from the start, as I mentioned. I think James Harden got kind of a technical foul in the second quarter, and then there was a flagrant one when I want to say that James Ennis, I don't know, did he clothesline him? He got a flagrant one for it. James Ennis clothesline.
Should have been a flagrant two.
Yeah, really just blatantly destroyed Josh Hart and going up for a layup. So I agree with you. That should have been a flagrant two, and that happens at 9:47 left in the fourth quarter. And then with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, as you guys are probably aware, this entire fracas happens, and it starts while Brandon Ingram decides to just be very, very angry with the referee. He bumps a referee because the referee, I believe it was Jason Phillips, called a foul. And I've never seen Brandon Ingram that mad in my entire life. And Brandon starts remonstrating toward the referee. They get Brandon away from it. Everyone gets to a kind of a cluster. And Chris Paul and Rajon Rondo, who have a history, come up and get in each other's face. Rajon Rondo apparently spits. There is a video that is high quality up on The Athletic right now. You can go find that. That Sam Amick, I don't know if he got it from the league office or a source or whoever he got it from, because Sam has sources that only very few people in the NBA have. Rajon Rondo spits in Chris Paul's face. Chris Paul throws his hand up in Rondo's face. Rondo swings at him. Chris Paul lands a pretty solid uppercut, I would say. And then all hell breaks loose, because of course it does. We on the internet decide to try and investigate this as if we're private investigators and as if we are going to be doing Kiki Vandeweg's job. So all of that happens. What is happening in your life as this is unfolding, Tony?
I was watching the game and I was, chilling with my kids, and we were just like, oh, there's a fight. And, then that broke out, and then, I got on Twitter, and, and then there was the initial video, and everybody thought it was Melo, and then everybody went to sleep, and then we woke up, and it's Rajon Rondo. I mean, it's very clear. That video is very clear.
Yeah.
That it's clear conclusively that spit came out of Rajon Rondo's mouth and hit Chris Paul in the face. That's number one. Number two, the only thing that that Rajon Rondo has is to say, hey, this was not intentional, that's number two, and that's fine, except for the fact that everybody was very adamant that Rajon didn't spit on Chris Paul to begin with. And now you're moving the goalposts to say, okay, well, maybe he did, but it wasn't intentional. So, I mean, intentional or not, I mean, and I think it was very much intentional. I think that Rajon Rondo spit in Chris Paul's face. And once you do that, just kind of as a man, all bets are kind of off. And that's the issue that we have. But I think that a lot of parties were at fault for what happened last night. I think that Brandon Ingram was at fault for basically losing his mind. I think Rajon Rondo was at fault for spitting in another man's face. I think Chris Paul was at fault. I think that he was he was less at fault than the others.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chris didn't even just straight up swing at Rajon.
Right. I was definitely less at fault.
I'm kind of surprised that he didn't just straight up swing at Rajon after we know now that Rondo spit at him. So I'm a little bit forgiving of Chris Paul in this scenario. I'm not going to lie to you.
I'm absolutely forgiving. I mean, I've been defending him all day on Twitter. And I put some of this on the officials. I think that they let last night's game get out of control. I put some of it on the league for the culture of allowing James Harden to play the brand of basketball that he plays, which is people over, flopping their calls and getting a lot of calls. I mean, that gets people frustrated. So I think that there are a lot of things, real and imagined, that led to the fracas of what we had last night. And I think I don't want to say it was unfortunate, because I think some of this stuff happens. It's unfortunate in a way, but I do think that punishment is going to be significant here.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. It should be significant. And the other thing that I would say about this is just the way the internet goes here with these things. We had a second spitter scenario where, in the Seinfeld episode, people thought Mello might have accidentally spit on Chris Paul while trying to break it up. What are we doing here with some of this? It's fun and it's amazing, but I was shocked whenever I saw the Rondo theory, or the Mello theory. The Mello theory, did that add up to you?
I don't know. I didn't know what to think.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of shocked at how many people kind of bought it hook, line, and sinker. But then again, I'm not shocked, because I think that there are a lot of people who are in a rush to condemn Chris Paul because he's such an irritant, and because he's a lot like James Harden in terms of he does whatever he can to get calls, and that's irritating to some people. But video is video, and when you saw that video this morning, it's conclusive. And there's a kind of unwritten rule of manhood that you don't spit in somebody's face. That's just the most vile, disgusting, disrespectful thing that you can do, almost do to another person, in the context of physical confrontation. Let me make that clear. Obviously, murdering somebody is a little bit worse. But I think when you look at what Rajon did, I can't fault Chris Paul one bit for the reaction that he took.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I'm not going to sit here and condemn Chris Paul for. I actually think, again, Chris Paul was pretty restrained with what his reaction could have been at the end of the day, just given that he didn't just straight up swing at this dude whenever that was the possible scenario here. What is your kind of thought process here on suspensions? Part of me, Chris Paul has to get some sort of suspension just because you can't get in a fight and throw punches like in your workplace, kind of. But like I'm forgiving, like I would say like 2 games, 3 games.
I'd give him 2 games, maybe 3 games max. I would probably be happy if they just gave him 1 game. Just for the retaliation. But if I were running the league, I wouldn't give him a game at all. I think, when you spit in somebody's face, all bets are off. I think, it's funny. Initially, I thought that Brandon Ingram would get the harsh or should get the harshest punishment, but now I think it's Rajon. I mean, I'd give Rajon some time. I just think that's disgusting.
So let's get to Brandon Ingram here. I think Brandon Ingram's going to get more than people think because...
Oh, I do too. I think he's going to get upwards. I think he's going to get in between 5 and 10 games. And this is why. It's not so much that he incited the initial fracas with James Harden. It's not even so much that he came back and threw the punch, which was really bad. It's that in the manner that he approached Jason Phillips.
Yeah.
Which to me was the most egregious. I mean, he got in Jason Phillips' face. He pointed at him demonstratively. I've only seen a player do that to an official once, and that was last year, Sean Livingston and Courtney Kirkland. However, Courtney Kirkland was just as culpable in that because, they basically sized each other up. But this was completely one-sided. And if you're the league, you cannot allow a player to do that to an official. Period. Point.
Yeah. And Jason Phillips, for his part, didn't even back down when Brandon Ingram, this 6'9" dude, came up on him, which respectable. I get that. But what it resulted in was Brandon making lower body contact, his lower half hit Jason Phillips's chest or stomach basically because Brandon is so much bigger. And I think he's going to get hit for that. I think he's going to get a lot more than people think. Plus you throw in the punch. He didn't make significant contact with the punch, but the fact that he threw it, he's going to get 2 or 3 games for the punch alone. And then you're going to throw on what happened with the official.
Right.
I think, you're probably looking at him getting 6 or 7 games pretty easy, to be honest.
Yeah, pretty easy. And I'd give Rondo at least 10.
I was going to say, to the man of the hour here, Rajon Rondo. You're giving him 10?
I'm giving him at least 10. You can't spit in somebody's face. That's just absolute. That's awful. It's disgusting.
I'm with that. I don't think that you can give... I mean, look, you're not going to suspend him for a whole season, but within reason, if it's under 12 or 14 games, I don't think that there should be any complaints because you cannot spit in another man's face. That's just being a normal human being. Forget even the macho, manhood, everything. And there's something to that. I'm not going to sit here and deny that, but just in terms of respectability to another human being, just don't spit in another human being's face. Stop this shit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that when you look at Rajon and you look at Chris Paul, I mean, obviously there's some history there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that goes back and forth there. So I think you have to take that into account as well.
Well, here's the last thing I'll ask you there, too, before we move on to the Warriors-Jazz game. But, how do we think this affects Rajon Rondo's legacy? Because, I made a joke earlier today on Twitter that, Rajon Rondo, given the fact that he wants to go into coaching, he's been not shy about sharing that future hope of his throughout the portion of his career here. What do we think this does for his legacy? Because we're going to be joking about Rajon Rondo and like SpitGate and all of this stuff now for like 3 decades because this guy is going to be in our lives that much longer.
Well, here's what I think about Rajon Rondo. I think that he's a brilliant person. I think he's a brilliant basketball player. I think he has a brilliant basketball mind. And I think he's very good and very talented at what he does. The problem is he has close to 0 people skills. And, you can't. And if I were a GM, if I'm an owner, if I'm a team president, like I absolutely want this guy on my staff. At the same time, I've got to look at, okay, he's beef with LeBron James before. He's beef with Chris Paul. He's beef with DeMarcus Cousins.
Here's the other one too.
He's beef with his own teammates.
Well,
he's beef with Ray Allen.
He also used a slur to describe Bill Kennedy
yes.
too. So there's a lot of bullshit that follows around Rajon Rondo.
There's a lot of water under that bridge.
Yeah, I get it. I get that he is incredibly intelligent, and it's just hard for me to look past. You can have 0 people skills and still be respectful, but calling Billy Kennedy what he called him, that's just bullshit. And spitting in another dude's face, that's bullshit. A lot of it is just so blatantly disrespectful that it's hard for me to look beyond that and think, hey, this is a guy that I enjoyed watching and will have a positive perception of going forward when I look back at his career.
He's somebody who I thought who I think could, intellectually, on paper, in a vacuum, could come close to going straight to the head of the line when it comes to coaching. But because of all of the stuff that surrounds him and all of the, all of the tension that comes with him, I mean, he's somebody that I would think would have to start, almost at the end of, at the beginning, at the back of the line, and work his way up and prove that he can handle people. What happens if you put him in charge of player development and one of the guys that he works with doesn't work hard enough for him, and he gets frustrated and he gets upset and he clashes with him? Rajon Rondo is just not the kind of guy that's ever been known to back down or to have boundaries when it comes to confrontation, physical or otherwise. So it's tough because. And I think it's kind of sad because, I mean, as you said, he's brilliant. He's legitimately one of the smartest dudes in the league.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Let's move on. Let's talk about this game that occurred. Also, stop with these LeBron takes about him holding back Chris Paul instead of his teammates and whatever the fuck you guys are saying. That's bullshit. Stop it.
Well,
that's totally insane.
It just tells you who's played the game and who hasn't. The unwritten rule in a fight is let's take LeBron, take Chris Paul out of it. But the unwritten rule in a fight, if your teammate's having a fight with an opponent, the unwritten rule that's been around for decades and decades and decades is that you hold back the opponent. Because if you hold back your teammate, the opponent could still get shot at.
Yep.
That's been the rule for decades. It's gone back. I remember, reading Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's book, Giant Steps, and him talking about the Kermit Washington fight, and him talking about when Rudy T got into it with whoever he got into it, everybody rushed to hold back. He rushed to hold back his opposing guy, and the opposing guy went and rushed to hold back his opposing guy. Of course, Kermit Washington comes in with the haymaker, but yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things where I think that if you're criticizing LeBron even in a vacuum, I think you just want to criticize LeBron.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think that people still look to criticize LeBron for whatever reason. Let's move on. Let's talk about the game you were at in Utah on Friday night. the Jonas Jerebko revenge game, as I think it should be dubbed. Jerebko makes a little tip-in as time expires to give the Warriors a 124-123 win over the Utah Jazz. This was also the Joe Ingles game in many ways. Set a career high with 27 points. He was just kind of all over the place. He was a stud in that game. But the question I will pose to you now is, does this make you think any differently about the Utah Jazz in how they match up with the Golden State Warriors going forward?
Well, it's I think it's difficult, right? Because for so long in that game, they matched Golden State shot for shot.
Yep.
And then
the numbers on that, by the way, 19 for 46 from 3 for Utah.
Yeah. Like that was just a terrific game regardless. And it wasn't even bad defense. It was just great offense on both ends. The problem that I have is that when that game slowed down and you needed isolation scoring, been the bugaboo for the Utah Jazz in the past playoffs, in the past 2 playoffs, and it was the bugaboo against Golden State. And I have no doubt that I think that they can score in the half court against most teams playoffs, but the Jazz want to measure themselves by how they fare against Houston, how they fare against Golden State.
Yeah.
And I think that, in their first test, in that part of the test, I think they still came up a little bit short, especially against, when Golden State, really started clamping down defensively. So, I think this Jazz team I think they're going to win a lot of games. I think they're going to win a ton of games. But I also think they still have stuff that they have to prove to themselves and to others.
Yeah, you brought up the idea of shot creation. And you mentioned that when this game slowed down in the first half, it really was played at a ridiculous pace. Like Utah dropped a 47-point second quarter against Golden State that it was just kind of shocking watching it unfold. I honestly didn't know that Utah had that kind of offense to burn. And, Golden State early in the year, you never know really what you're going to get in terms of effort. But it did seem like to me that Golden State did come out and realize, hey, this is a game that we should take seriously because we should take this opposing team seriously. Did you get that impression being there?
Yeah, I did. And I thought they took it seriously in the first half. I thought that they really took it seriously in the second half.
Yeah. They locked in big time.
Yeah, they locked in. To the point where it got contentious. And I thought for the most part, I still thought that Utah stood up to that. They had a 10-point lead with 8 minutes to go.
Yeah. And
they withstood, Golden State got to within 103 to within 197. Then Joe Ingles hits the 3 at the third quarter buzzer, and then the Jazz, out and they hit a 3 at the beginning of the fourth quarter. So they withstood that real initial run, and they got to within. They were still up double digits with 8 minutes to go. But then what happens with those kind of games? Those games slow down. And they slowed down in the last 4 minutes and the last 3 minutes. And in the last 3 minutes, Golden State knew exactly what they wanted to do. They were either going to isolate Kevin Durant or they were going to enter the ball into the post, into Draymond Green, and they were going to rub Stephen Curry off of a bunch of rub screens. And Curry got loose for 2 or 3 threes. Kevin Durant got loose in isolation. And the Jazz didn't quite know what they wanted to do. They were up 1. The Jazz were up 123 to 122 on the second to last possession of the game. And that was the possession where Donovan Mitchell ended up taking a 3-pointer over Kevin Durant. The problem with that possession was they didn't start to get into any action until there was about 5 or 6 left on the clock. And then by that time, there was very little that Mitchell could do other than, put up a contested 3-pointer over Kevin Durant. And, so I think, Golden State was a little bit sure of what they wanted to do. Like the Jazz knew what they wanted to do, but Golden State was sure of what they were going to do. And I think that there was a difference there. And I think you saw that difference.
Yeah, and you mentioned the shot making difference that is Golden State, and it's their difference against anyone realistically. And Utah is no different, but it is the one thing that is concerning. It's the one point of contention that you can bring up whenever you're discussing how real is Utah. Where do they get the shot creation whenever an opposing team focuses on making Donovan Mitchell inefficient? Donovan Mitchell had 19 points on 24 shooting possessions against Golden State. Joe Ingles was ridiculous in this game, but you can't count on Joe Ingles to score 27 points on 7 of 11 from 3 every single night. Now, one thing that Utah did in their first game against Sacramento that I really liked was they started in the fourth quarter. They had Derek Favors play without Rudy Gobert for a little while, and they ISO'd on the block Derek Favors against some guys that when an opposing team goes a little bit smaller or with guys who aren't quite as strong as Derek, he can just kind of dominate them and get easy buckets on the block. I think that's a move that you might see them go to a little bit more often, but against Golden State, you can't really do that because you probably can't have both Derek and Rudy on the floor against them. So, part of me wants to say that, Golden State at 70%, which is probably what this game was. Golden State played their 70th percentile game, whereas Utah I thought played maybe a 90th percentile game for them, maybe a 95th percentile game from them. Really, the only thing they didn't get was Donovan Mitchell production. They still just came up that little bit short, and that's what's scary.
Yeah, I think that there were things. I think that there were things that the Jazz were able to do, but there were things that they didn't do. They absolutely didn't, play well defensively in spurts. And they, that second half, obviously they scored 47 points. They scored, was it 47? I think they might have scored 41 points total in that second half.
42. I'm looking it up now.
42.
Yep.
42 points total in that second half. They scored 47 in the second quarter alone.
Yep.
So I think that there were things. I don't think it wasn't a perfect game by the Jazz, which is, if I were a Jazz fan, that's what would make me feel relatively well about that. They didn't have to play a perfect game just in contact. But at the same time, I thought that when they got to the point where, they had a chance to win and it became possession by possession, I thought that they really wanted to win. And it was fun seeing Jonas Jerebko really, be the difference maker there.
Was there, as someone who doesn't know a whole lot about how he left, was there any sort of contentiousness there?
Not really. The Jazz did it as a favor to Jonas, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Because they knew that with Thabo Sefolosha coming back, Thabo was going to be on him in the rotation. So he projected as 13th or 14th man on the roster. And the Jazz felt that they didn't want to keep a guy like that as a 14th guy who was capable of rotation minutes elsewhere, or still capable of being a rotation guy in the league. So, and that's what led to them not picking up the second year of his contract. And obviously, they were right in that contention because it took about 15 minutes for Golden State to pick him up.
Yeah.
So I know what Klay Thompson tweeted. I know what Stephen Curry put on his Instagram. I know that Jonas celebrated pretty demonstratively in front of Utah's bench, but
that's what was weird about it to me.
Yeah, it wasn't like that was an acrimonious breakup. And I talked to a whole bunch of people in the organization at the time, and they were, when they signed George Niang. One of the reasons why I was told that they signed George Niang is because, hey, he's somebody who's just going to be happy to be here as the 15th guy. And, Jonas wasn't going to just be happy to be there. He's going to want to play, so to
be honest, there's not a wild difference there between Niang and Urebko. I mean, like, Urebko's a little bit better, but, like, there's not enough
Now there
of a
isn't.
difference there.
Now there isn't, because I think that we saw George, and we saw him in the preseason, but at the time in July, there was thought to be a difference. I think that George has kind of exceeded expectations. So, and I think, but I mean, he's still, if George goes the next 2 or 3 weeks without playing, he's still happy at the end of the day to have a guaranteed contract in the league.
Yeah, and like the reason that I say that is like Niang was first team All G League last year. Like he actually has shown himself to be a good basketball player at this stage, on some level, in America, we'll say, given the fact that it was in the G League and now it's in the NBA. Like, whenever I'm talking like the difference between him and Jonas, again, Jonas is better because Jonas is just like that slight bit more athletic and can deal with things defensively a little bit more than George can. But like offensively, I mean, George can really pass it. He can shoot it. Like there's a lot to really like about him as your 13th man on the bench, as you kind of mentioned.
Yeah. And he reminds the Jazz of Boris Diaw. Now, he's not as good as Boris was in his prime, but he's probably a little better now than the Jazz version, than the Boris Diaw that the Jazz got in that 1 year.
Yeah.
And that's somebody right now who's, essentially their fourth power forward. And, he proved that he can play. And Golden State, against Golden State, he proved that he could play. He hit 2 threes. He had a nice transition layup. He had three rebounds. He had an assist. And, he's somebody who is really, really skilled from that 4 position. Can stretch you out to 3, can make plays off the dribble, can really pass the ball. I think that not only does he have a chance to, he can help the Jazz. And I think that he'll be, I don't think that this is a 1-year thing with the Jazz. I think that he'll be back at least next year.
With the Warriors, the last thing I want to mention here is that we are legitimately going to get like a Steph Curry MVP style year this year. I don't know if he'll win the award just because there are like 5 other players like Anthony Davis and Giannis, and you can certainly look at James Harden and LeBron, and Russell Westbrook comes back tonight as well. So like, look, there are a lot of really good players in the NBA, but I think we're going to see a season commensurate with Stephen Curry last year in the 50 games that he played, and in 2016, which is when he won his unanimous MVP. Whether or not he wins it, I don't know, but that's the style season we're going to get from him this year. Yeah,
he's first 2 games, he's looked really good. And obviously, there's really no way to stop him. I mean, he's a special talent. And,
he looks like he has that little burst back. You know what I mean? Like last year, there were times where or maybe not last year. Last year, it seemed like he had it until he started missing games. But like in 2017, it didn't seem like he quite had that same burst. This year, though, it does. Yeah,
he does. He's getting to the basket off the dribble. He's, obviously he's finishing when he gets there. Mid-range is great. Looks great. Obviously his
shooting 60% perimeter shooting 3 right now, so sure.
Perimeter shooting is terrific. He was unreal in the second half against the Jazz.
Yeah.
Him and Durant were unreal. Were both unreal. So it's really interesting to see, and obviously he's still in his prime even at the age of 30.
Yeah, like part of me just wants to make sure that people remember, hey, Stephen Curry is like, if you consider LeBron on a tier all by himself, I get that. But Stephen Curry is in that tier right below LeBron. And I think you can make the case that Steph is maybe the guy in that tier who most often reaches that level above and gets into LeBron's consistently dominant tier.
Yeah, for sure. Right now, if you're looking at point guards, he's one of the top 5 point guards ever already.
Yeah, I agree with that. Last thing I want to ask you, Tony, any rookies, any young players, any random guys that have stood out to you so far? You want to talk about Luka?
Man, I love Luka.
He's great. He's really good.
He was great last night. He was great against Minnesota.
How about Derrick Rose, by the way? Derrick Rose has looked pretty good through their first 3 games. Derrick
had 28 against Dallas.
Yeah.
Derrick was Derek was playing ball.
Yeah, he's looked like useful spot starter for Minnesota, which is very good.
I mean, but Tibbs isn't going to spot start him. Tibbs is just going to throw him out there.
Yeah,
playing 40 minutes a night.
Yeah, it's gonna be a problem. But
so Derek will be done by January.
Yeah, Luka though. Luka, I think he had like let me pull up the number.
Yeah, 26.
He had 26 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. I will say one thing with Luka, the athleticism difference I think is showing up a little bit in the first 2 games. Like he has 10 turnovers in his first 2 games. And part of that is like he just kind of gets himself into these really awkward, shitty positions where he has to throw these like weird jump passes to nowhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But at the same time, the skill is so prevalent.
Yeah.
That it's just crazy. I mean, he is so skilled.
Well, it's the thing that people don't recognize enough with him, I think, is that they look at the fact that he like looks doughy and doesn't have the same burst as like an elite level, like normal athlete, and think this guy is not athletic. The thing that he does as well as the best players in the NBA right now, I think, is he doesn't ever have to slow down to like do a crossover, like a move to gain separation. He does everything at the same speed, and that's really hard for a defense to guard. Like there's no sense of deceleration there. He can just do everything that he wants at the same speed, and that's damn near impossible to guard.
Yeah, exactly. And he's so smart, and his footwork is so good, and obviously he's a great shooter. And he's really big. That's the other thing. Dude is big. He's a big dude.
Yeah, like he's
6'8".
Yeah, 6'8". They have him listed under 220 right now.
He's not under 220.
He's not under 235, I don't think, right now. Like, I don't know where they're listing him at 218, but like that dude is big, he's strong, he's powerful. They do a good job of getting him the ball in good situations, like they'll post him against smaller guards, they'll run like dribble handoff plays for him. It's exactly what we thought we would get with Rick Carlisle.
Yeah, he's I mean, when you put Rick in there, and I think the contrast of what's around him is really good too. Like he has, a really athletic run and jump, rim protecting big in DeAndre.
Yep.
He's got a really athletic point guard with Dennis Smith. I mean, so the contrast of his teammates to me, I think complements the skill set that he brings to the table.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. The guy that I want to bring up before we get out of here, I like what I've seen from Jaren Jackson. I don't like the way that Memphis is utilizing him. Like, I haven't seen them run any pick and pop with him and Mike Conley. Like, they're posting him a ton, trying to get like post mismatches with him. But when he is in his spots where he can succeed, like when he runs the floor and pins a smaller player beneath him and ends up just being able to go up for an easy basket quickly, the stuff where he spots up and knocks down threes, he's ridiculously talented. He finishes so well with both hands. He looks like one of the most athletic players on the floor every time that he steps on the floor. And to top that off as well, I think that the rebounding so far has been a little bit better than what I thought it would be. That was the one thing that I thought he might struggle with early on, but he actually has been, I think, pretty darn good on the glass for what I expected.
And he's really good defensively.
Yeah, he is. He absolutely is.
I think that he's a steal, even at pick number 4.
Yeah, he's going to be an all-star. I have no question about that. And he just turned 19 years old.
No question about that. He's going to be great for a long time.
The last segment here on the podcast before we move on and get to Chris Stone, Boban Watch. Boban right now is averaging 15.5 points a game and 6.5 rebounds per game on
how many minutes?
17. He's legit so good. Like, the thing that's different with him than like other like sedentary bigs is that he's so skilled with the ball in his hands that like you can run dribble handoff stuff. You can run like pick and roll stuff where you can just throw the ball super high to him because he has such soft hands and such soft touch around the basket. Like he can just dominate around the basket. It's amazing.
I mean, he's catching dunks on people without without jumping, man.
13 points and 5 rebounds. I can't remember a time where he had consecutive games where he has had double-digit points like this. Like,
yeah,
I'm loving it. And if you go back to preseason, he's had 6 straight games in double figures. It's awesome. I am here for the Boban assance.
I'm here for Boban. I'm definitely here for Boban. No question. He's a good player. He's, the only thing about him is you can't play him 30 minutes a night.
No.
But other than that, everything's good.
You play him 20 minutes and you're going to get probably 14 points. It's amazing. Tony, tell the people what's going on in your life. Tell the people what you've got coming up here.
Man, I've got my Thabo Sefolosha story coming up. I've got my it's good that we talked about George Niang because I got my George Niang story coming up really, really soon. I got coverage of the Jazz in Memphis tomorrow night, and then on the first major road trip of the season that goes through Houston, New Orleans, Dallas, and Minnesota. So a lot coming out. You can follow me at T Jones on the NBA on Twitter, and it's a pleasure to be your teammate at The Athletic.
Thanks, Tony. We'll be back in a minute here with Chris Stone. Before we get to Chris Stone, I have 2 advertisements to read to you. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. They strive to make financial services work for everyone, not just the wealthy. It is a non-intimidating way for stock market newcomers to invest for the first time with true confidence. And the reason for that is that it is a simple and intuitive system. You just go to the website, robinhood.com, and it's a very basic look. And I don't mean basic negatively. I mean it in that it is incredibly easy to use. That's my favorite part about it. You just use a search bar at the top. You type in what you're looking for, and you can buy and sell stocks within minutes. There's no cost, no commission fees. Other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, but Robinhood doesn't charge commission fees. They trade you trade stocks, and you keep all of your profits. Like I said, it's easier to understand. They have charts and market data. You can place a trade in just 4 taps on your smartphone. Their web platform is what I use, and I think it's incredibly easy to use. And you learn how to invest just by doing. And as you build your portfolio and you discover new stocks, they have a personalized news feed to make it really easy for you. Robinhood is giving listeners a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help build your portfolio today. Sign up at GameTheory, GameTheory.robinhood.com. That's GameTheory.robinhood.com. Again, they're offering you a free stock like an Apple, Ford, or Sprint to just get you started along your way. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. Robinhood is really, really simple to use, and I'm a big fan of it. Our second sponsor today, it's one that's been around for a while, and it's been around for a while because it is just a great product. RX Bar is a whole food protein bar that is made with real whole ingredients. They want to be transparent and upfront with their customers, which is why they label the core ingredients on the front of the package and the flavor components on the back. RX Bar wants to build things the right way. They believe in the power of transparency, and they let those core ingredients do all of the talking, with all of them listed on the front of the package. You'd likely recognize RX Bar at the shelf. They're the ones that have egg whites for protein, dates to bind, nuts for texture, and other delicious ingredients like unsweetened chocolate, real fruit, and spices like sea salt or cinnamon. Because it turns out that the real food ingredients. They actually taste great. They're gluten-free, soy-free, and dairy-free. Whether you like sweet or savory, chocolate or fruit, there is definitely an RX bar for you. And the biggest reason that I'm a fan is that they're just great for a number of occasions. If you're hopping on a flight, if you have to get breakfast on the go, if you just need a snack at the office to break out of that 3 p.m. slump and you don't want to go and grab coffee because coffee is going to keep you up until 1 o'clock in the morning, RX Bar is the best option that you have. And egg white protein stands out as a source of protein that is easy for your body to absorb. They come in 14 delicious flavor varieties: mango pineapple, chocolate hazelnut, peanut butter and berries, chocolate sea salt, mixed berry blueberry, maple sea salt, peanut butter chocolate, and coffee chocolate. They have some seasonal flavors as well. And now they also have RX Bar nut butter as well. For 25% off of your first order, visit rxbar.com/gametheory and enter that promo code GameTheory at checkout. That's GameTheory. Again, I can offer you 25% off of your first order by visiting rxbar.com/gametheory. It really is just a tremendous, tremendous product. All right, we're here now with Chris Stone. Chris, we're going to break down some NBA draft prospects today. How's it going?
It's going well. Pretty excited to do that. Getting closer to the season.
We're what? I guess. Well, let me do math. We're like 2 weeks away.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's way sooner than I thought.
Yeah, November 6th. They start the season a week earlier this year. I'm in Indianapolis for the Champions Classic, so I'm excited for that. I'm going to get to see at least one of the guys on this list here that we're going to break down today, because we're going to talk about the wings. Before we get into guys like RJ Barrett and who are some of the other guys we got on this list here, now that I'm pulling it up as I'm super prepared. Romeo Langford, Keldon Johnson. We'll get into more of those guys here in a minute. How are you doing? I haven't talked to you in like 2 or 3 weeks, man.
Yeah, man, it's been a while. The last time we talked, I was in New York. I'm no longer in New York, which is great. I've finally been home for a couple of weeks now. So things are going pretty well. It's turned to fall here, which is good because DC summers are terrible. But we're soon approaching winter, which is also terrible in DC. So we'll see how that goes.
You got to make that LA move, man. I don't know what winter is.
It's the dream.
It is just the best way to live. I cannot emphasize that enough. As someone who grew up in Pittsburgh, it is unquestionably the best way to live.
Yep. I went to Pittsburgh in January like 2 years ago, and that was just a horrible mistake.
Yeah, look, I like Pittsburgh. It was a good place to grow up. I went to get my master's degree at Carnegie Mellon. I chose to go back to Pittsburgh even after I left to get my undergrad. But man, is it bad in the winter. It is harsh. Yeah.
Harsh winter is not really something I'm into. It's probably my least favorite season.
Yeah, no one wants that in their life. So everyone should move out to LA. That's my pitch. Let's jump in. RJ Barrett is who I have at number 1 on my draft board. I would imagine you're the same.
Yeah, I also have RJ Barrett number 1. I think that's going to be a near consensus. There will be, I think, maybe a few people who go with Zion, for example, but I would guess it's near consensus that RJ is number 1.
Yeah, and look, we'll talk about Nasir Little here in a minute as well, because I have Nasir on the wing list as opposed to the forward list, although he kind of floats in between both of those, I think, pretty well.
Sure.
I think that Nasir Little you could have reasonably as a number 1 if you really, really like the translatable aspects of his game, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But let's talk about RJ first. RJ, to me, is just the most accomplished perimeter player that has come through the North American, development process here for a while. Dominated Team USA as an underage player, playing for Team Canada in the, 2017 Under-19 World Championships. Has just been ridiculously good. Anytime he's gone up against elite-level prospects, was very good at Hoop Summit as well. Is there anything that worries you about him right now?
I don't know that the jump shot is fully there yet in terms of consistently being efficient. I think if we were confident that he was going to be, a reasonably well above average 3-point shooter, there would be no real question about who the top prospect in this class is. I don't think that Barrett's a bad shooter by any means, but I just think we need to see some level of consistency from him in that regard. And word is that that's the thing he's worked on this offseason while at Duke, and we'll see how that translates to the college 3-point line. But if that's there,
I will bring this up as well. NBA scouts who have been down there to Duke and who have seen him shoot the ball throughout preseason workouts and everything like that, they do believe that he is shooting it at a much higher clip right now. And he worked with Drew Hanlon this summer as well. A lot of reason to be positive about that right now.
Yeah, and I think if he answers that question, it's tough to consider other prospects number one, just in terms of the well-rounded offensive game that RJ has. And I think defensively he should be fairly passable. When I saw him in McDonald's practices, he was willing to battle as a switch defender, get into the post and defend against bigger guys, which is, not something that's super prevalent in this class all the time. And so I don't have a ton of concerns. I guess there are maybe some concerns about what the upside is and how high his ceiling is. But in terms of just overall skill, he's pretty high up there.
So, yeah, he's 6'7", about 200 pounds already. Not a guy that gets by on wild athleticism. You get him in space, he's a good athlete, he can finish above the rim, but more of a guy who uses his body to get separation as opposed to a guy who uses a ridiculous first step quickness move to get separation. He does have good change of pace, he does have good change of direction, but that's where the concern comes in for some people. He is a fairly physical player. The lower end people on him will bring up Shabazz Muhammad when they talk about him, because Shabazz had a similar brand of physicality when he was that young. Now Shabazz, when he was playing high school basketball, was apparently 20 years old. So you would think that there is more upside in what RJ is doing in terms of the way that his body could grow and in terms of the way that he could continue to gain quickness and athletic upside. But that's where the concern comes in for some people about him.
Yeah, you mentioned Shabazz Muhammad's age here. I think it's worth pointing out that RJ is on the younger end for this class. He's a June birthday, so someone who will turn 19, I think, just before the draft, which is, a positive in terms of where he's at with his game already and projecting development curves going forward.
Yeah, he was a reclassify guy that was supposed to be in the 2019 class originally.
Right.
So a lot of youth there, a lot of potential for development in terms of him becoming a guy that you can just really trust and lean on to get buckets consistently. He does need to shoot it, but I think at some point he's going to shoot it. The mechanics are fine. The results just haven't quite been there. He's very balanced. I think that's the big thing that really impresses me is great footwork, great balance in everything that he does. I just think he's going to be quite simply an incredibly effective basketball player going forward.
Yeah, he's someone I think who, I think two things are true. One is that I think he has a really high floor as a prospect, someone who's going to contribute in one way or another at the NBA level. The second thing is I think that if you're looking for guys who have, good scoring instincts and the ability to get buckets on the wing with positional size, he's the best of the lot in this class. I'm not sure that there are other freshmen who really can score as consistently as him.
Yeah, I actually brought that up on Danny LaRue's Real GM radio podcast. I did that on Friday. And one of the things we talked about was, this is a top-heavy class, first and foremost.
Very much.
There are 4 guys that I think you and I feel really confident about.
Yeah.
But among that 4, there is some downside with, the other 3 players. With RJ, if he didn't become a very good starting caliber player, I would be shocked.
Yeah, I think I agree with that for sure.
I would genuinely be shocked if he was not at least a 18 point a game, fine 2 ways, small forward who like I said, starts like 500 games in his career. The upside is much higher than that. Like the upside is like many-time All-Star. That's why he's number one on the board. But like he does have that floor as well.
Yeah.
So is there anything else we're missing with RJ before we get in? Like the defense, like you mentioned, it's so hard to really evaluate defenders like that. He does at least make effort though. And I'll be interested to see how Duke utilizes him. He'll have to guard on the perimeter a little bit more than what I think he's done in the past. Like sometimes Canada has played him at the 3. I've even seen lineups where like, because he's 6'7" and bigger than what the like ostensible 4-man is, like they kind of have him guard 4s. So like, I'll be interested to see that. He's already playing on Canada's like senior national team as well to kind of give you just a perspective on where his game is right now. He is just really quite unbelievable as a prospect, I think, in terms of his polish.
Yeah, he's really, really good. I think that, we've pretty consistently, I think, hit on the 2019 draft being down, but I wouldn't worry too much about that if I were a team with an early pick, and RJ Barrett's a large portion of the reason why.
Yeah. Let's move on. Nasir Little is who I have at number 2 on my board. Again, you could fit him into kind of a few different buckets here. About 18 months ago, Nasir Little was like a good 4-star prospect, like an above average 4-star prospect for most evaluators in the recruiting world. And like most of the time, I don't get a chance to see those guys until the summer before their senior year. I do most of the time see the guys that are like top 25 prospects as juniors and then like have a very strong knowledge going into their next year. But with him, like the first time I saw him was the summer before his senior year, and I was blown away when I saw him. And I was like, why is this dude a 4-star? And I like asked like Evan Daniels and folks that I believe in and know. And Evan was like, yeah, he's gotten way better. He's unbelievable. And he's now moved up to the number 2 player in this class. I think that maybe on recruiting boards, did he end up that high? Was he like maybe 5th or something on them? Somewhere
around there for sure.
Yeah.
Certainly not any lower.
So yeah, the reason that NBA people are a little bit higher is that he has just murdered every event that NBA scouts have been at. Like he's the MVP at McDonald's, he's the MVP at Jordan Brand Classic. He's just absolutely destroyed whenever he's been invited to an event like this. And B, everything about his game that I have seen is remarkably translatable to the next level on a plane that it's hard for me to remember in a prospect in terms of the way he moves and shoots. Like he has unbelievable footwork. He has unbelievable pull-up ability. The way he moves off the ball is really good. He's a two-way player. He's 6'6" with a 6'11" wingspan and has like very, probably not elite athleticism, but it's certainly above average athleticism. He's just like everything that you're looking for in a modern wing prospect.
Yeah, I think that's right. We just talked about RJ as being probably the best scoring wing in the class, or the highest upside scoring wing in the class. I think Nasir Little is probably the highest upside in terms of two-way ability. Really someone who is a willing defender. I think people probably remember that sequence from the McDonald's game where he goes one-on-one on both ends with Zion Williamson and nails a pull-up on the left side, and then Zion's driving on the other end, and Little kind of stuffs him, and that's when Zion broke his thumb.
The other thing is too, like these one-on-one things with him, they keep coming up. Like he had one of them against Cam Reddish, against Jordan Brand. Like these moments, they just keep happening where guys like, maybe they come at him, maybe he wants to go at them. But like it takes a special kind of player first and foremost for teammates in all-star settings to just like clear out and say, fuck it, go for it. You guys want to go one-on-one, we'll stand around for a couple possessions. And like everyone just did that with him and Zion, and everyone did it with him and Cam. And he got the better of both of them whenever he did those. Like it's like a sample of 6 possessions offensively and then 6 possessions defensively. But it was impressive to see him not like shrink away from the moment and show a high level of confidence and competence defensively.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe one of the things to point out here is that you kind of mentioned that he could fit in that combo forward bucket, and he's a little bigger than some of the other guys in this range. I think he's sitting on like a 7'1" or 7'2" wingspan, and when you see him physically, he looks bigger than a guy like RJ Barrett, just in terms of length and size. And so I think there's some potential for him to move up and down the lineup a little bit more there. I think that wingspan is part of the reason why we're talking about him, obviously in addition to the mentality, but part of the reason why we're talking about him as someone who could be a really, really good defender at the next level, that could make, kind of be a difference maker on that end of the floor. I really like his all-around game. I think that we probably need to see a little bit more in terms of his ability to carry an offense, and I'm not sure that's something we'll get at North Carolina this year. Obviously, the team dynamics there, they have a number of good offensive players coming back who are going to use a lot of possessions, but I do think that there's potential there. Like, you see flashes of his ability. You mentioned the pull-up jumper. His ability to get to the rim in a straight line is very good. He's a good vertical athlete. I think that ability is there. I'm just not sure how much of it we're going to get to see this year, which is maybe the only thing that really holds him back.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. To me, he's just like very clearly ahead of like Luke May and even Kobe White, like who I really like actually. Like he's so far ahead of those two in my opinion. That it's going to be hard, I think, for North Carolina to hold him back. But like, if I remember correctly, like did he not start in their Bahamas trip that they took?
I don't remember.
Yeah,
but that's possible.
Like, I feel like he didn't play like as big a role in the like trip that North Carolina took, as you would have expected at the very least. And the one thing that I like about all of this is that Roy will not be afraid to play him as a small ball four, and
absolutely not.
Let him like kind of dominate against guys that are not as strong and physically capable as he is. The one thing that scares me, though, is that Roy will not be afraid to sit him down if necessary. But you know what? Fuck it. If he needs to sit down, then he needs to sit down, and he's probably not worth the number 2 pick in the draft anyway.
Sure. That's certainly true.
But yeah, defensively, he's tough. He's physical. He has great broad shoulders, great length, as you mentioned. The comps will come at some point for him to be like considered, what do you want to call it? Like the next Kawhi Leonard or something. Just don't.
It's going to come.
Just don't.
Yeah, we got to get off the comps. Like they do such a disservice both to the prospect and to the player they're being compared to.
I agree. Let's move on. Next guy here, Romeo Langford for me. I have Cam Reddish is like more of a combo forward. Zion also combo forward, if not a big. He certainly will weigh more than any of the bigs that we talk about. So Romeo Langford, one of the highest scoring players in Indiana State high school basketball history. I think that there is slightly more hype than substance there right now, and I don't mean that like wholly negatively. I do think he is a very, very, very high-end talent, but I think people in Indiana talk about him as the second coming of God, and he's not quite that.
Yeah, I think we talked about this at one point, that the gap between Romeo Langford, Indiana basketball commit, and Romeo Langford, Indiana or NBA prospect is pretty significant. Obviously, the fact that he committed late, Indiana was in bad need of a commitment at that point, really, I think, brought up his status as a college basketball symbol, particularly for that state. He's a good NBA prospect, but he's someone who I have at 6 or 7 on my board, and in most classes would not be that high.
I think I agree with that. I'd be more comfortable with him as like a normal lottery pick.
Right. Yeah, I don't mean that we would like see him in the late teens or something like that, but someone who is like 10 to 14 would be, I think, much more likely in a lot of classes for him.
Yeah, that's probably where I would see him fit best as well. So, with that being said, what do you like about Romeo Langford?
I think he's a really talented scorer. Someone who can handle the ball. When I saw him in person at McDonald's, he had a tight handle. was able in some ball screens to keep guys on his hips and just kind of control the pace of play. I thought the jump shot looked pretty good there. And I think that he's probably a better vertical athlete in terms of explosion at the rim than he really gets credit for. And then the last thing I'll mention is I think he has the ability to take and make some tough shots in the half court, off the dribble, in the mid post, which is obviously a valuable skill in the NBA where shot clock grinds down and you need somebody to be able to get a bucket.
Yeah, so like he really does a good job of playing at his own pace, while not like some guys play at their own pace and they don't have the requisite athleticism. He plays with a level of poise that I think most players his age don't necessarily reach. And I think that because of that, you see his scoring instincts really stand out at a high level, in my opinion. So I am a little bit, I don't want to say worried about the shot, but it's a very awkward shot.
Sure.
He gets this is something that whenever my top 100 board comes out and some of my scouting profiles get released, I kind of break down in a little bit of detail. Like he gets a inordinate amount of wrist bend, and because of that, his jump shot just takes longer to develop than most other players. He has to get a little bit more elevation than most other players, and I think it actually leads to him taking a lot of contested shots. Like if you look at his 3-point percentage in AAU, it was 31%. If you look at 3-point percentages in these exhibition circuits and everything that people take analytics on, it's not great. Not what you would expect for someone who has the touch that he has and has the balance and gets the good rotation on the ball and everything that Langford does as a shooter. So I'll be interested to see if he can quicken up his release a little bit and make it a little bit less prone to having his jump shot contested.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a point of concern. Obviously hope that that's the one thing that sort of comes around, and that some of those shots that he's taking now that are tough shots that he's able to make become easier over time.
Yeah. In terms of two-way ability, I'm not a fan of him defensively, but he's also very clearly never been asked to defend. He dies on the vine every time he meets a ball screen. If I was a team playing Indiana early next season, I would run Romeo Langford through every ball screen imaginable. I would not care who was guarding him. I wouldn't care if it was my small forward who can't dribble. I would run him through the most rudimentary ball screen possible and make Romeo figure out how to defend ball screens because he really struggled with it. Really struggled with it.
Yeah, they play Marquette in the third game of the season. I don't know if he'll be in position to guard some of their most frequent ball screen users, but they do run a lot of ball screens, so we might get an early look at that.
Yeah. The next thing that I will bring up with him is I'm not entirely sure how good of a playmaker he is yet. I think he has potential there, and I wouldn't want to throw that away and say he can't do it. Again, though, he didn't play on a great AAU team. He had 22 vision, which was catered to him. His father ran the program. He just wasn't asked to do that. He was asked to score. He has good vision, and you can see it come occasionally. But I will be interested to see more of what he looks like in a full team concept.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right with him.
I have him at number 5. You have him 6'7", you said?
Yep.
Let's move on. Keldon Johnson is next for me. Guy at Kentucky, 6'5", 6'10", or 6'6", 6'10" wingspan. All sorts of two-way toughness potential. Great driver, really good passer with the ball in his hands. Very, very good defensive player. Plays incredibly hard and plays incredibly hard consistently. What else do you like about Keldon Johnson?
So here's my brief Keldon Johnson story, which is that the first day of McDonald's practices at 8 a.m. in the morning, when everyone else is sort of slogging their way through, as this class is sometimes apt to do, Johnson is just yelling at the top of his lungs about every single thing on the floor. And it was really good to see someone in this class show that type of energy, which I think is nice. I think that in terms of his actual basketball ability, he shows some nice ability to run dribble handoff actions, can likely be a secondary type ball handler at the next level to me. I like that he's really active. He runs the floor and gets out in transition, is willing to crash the offensive glass, and then I think is a good two-footed leaper. You mentioned the competitiveness, toughness in terms of defending. I think that sticks out amongst other players. He's someone who I think has a real chance, if he gets the opportunity at Kentucky, to rise up draft boards because of, that two-way ability. Like, it wouldn't at all surprise me if at the end of the season we're looking at him as a better prospect than, say, Quentin Grimes and Romeo Langford, two players who I think coming into the season are rated slightly higher than him.
I'll even go this far. If you told me he goes higher in the draft than Cam Reddish, I wouldn't be surprised.
Sure, I think that's reasonable as well.
Yeah, like I have Cam higher because I think Cam is just so physically gifted that it's impossible to not have him higher. But in terms of their mentality when they play, it's night and day between Keldon Johnson and Cameron Reddish. Like this dude just fights and claws for every single inch on the basketball floor in the best possible way, and I absolutely love it. In terms of his weaknesses, he's just not a great athlete. Like, we can say that. Like, for what he is, he's not a great athlete, at least. Most of these wings that come in, like, they are super explosive vertically and like lightning quick in terms of movement. Like, he's not quite the athlete I don't think Romeo Langford is. Certainly not the athlete that Nasir Little is. I'd probably even say that RJ probably has a little bit more than he does. Keldon can get up and throw down a dunk when he has some space to do so. And right. Again, his mentality is such that he will try and dunk on just about everyone when he gets the chance. But there's a little bit of athletic concern there, but it's not athletic concern to where he doesn't meet a specific threshold. He certainly meets the athletic threshold to be a successful wing.
Yeah, he's just not an elite athlete there. The thing that I was going to say about his athleticism is exactly what you said. He's someone who needs a little bit of space to get his full vertical explosion, not someone who's just going to jump out of nowhere and dunk on somebody or do something like that in the way that some of these other wing prospects would.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, you don't necessarily need
totally that
at the next level, in my opinion. I'm a big fan. Like, I think he's very, very good. To me, he's very clearly Kentucky's best prospect this year.
I agree with that.
Let's move on. Who do I have next? Now that I look through the text message that I sent you earlier.
Kevin Porter.
Oh, Kevin Porter. Kevin Porter for me is like a borderline lottery guy to start this year. Part of that is probably because I'm out here and just kind of know what's going on. He is getting rave reviews from people who saw him at Hoop Summit whenever he came in and dominated against those guys. The All-Star circuit that he's come in or that he came in and played incredibly well at. He is just an absolute monster that nobody is really talking about enough right now.
Yeah, he's someone who I haven't seen enough of to make like definitive conclusions on, but he's also someone who everything that I have seen, I really, really like. Good athlete, positional size, has the ability to create offense, should be a reasonable shooter, seems to be capable of creating offense, excelled. It was Hoop Summit, right, where he had that big scrimmage game against those guys. He's a May 2000 birthday, so he's younger for the class, has a 6'9" wingspan. Like, everything that I know about Kevin Porter and have seen about Kevin Porter and have watched myself, I am very excited about Kevin Porter and am hoping to obviously see plenty more at USC this season.
Yeah, so he's just like your prototypical 3-level scorer.
Right.
Can really shoot it off the dribble, but can also really rise up and finish. He's not like the world's most creative ball handler, but he does have the ability to use a ball screen. He can go ISO and get separation for a jumper that way. Finishes with both hands. I would say he's certainly much better as a lefty finisher because he's left-handed naturally, but he really is just absolutely a spectacular athlete vertically. And to me, like, he's the guy that not enough people are talking about as a like potential one and done type. Like, I think he ended up as 20th, 25th in this class in recruiting rankings, like something like that.
Yeah, and some places I'm not even sure he was that high.
Yeah, so like, let me look at the composite here. I can pull it up real quick. So yeah, like he's the number 28 composite recruit in this class. I will be surprised, like barring injury, if he's not a one and done.
Oh yeah, I think that's true.
So yeah, Kevin Porter, very, very, very good. There is some concern like that he needs to play harder, more consistently. We don't really have a great feel if he's going to be anything resembling a two-way player, but his offense is just like he can be a bench scorer floor in the NBA pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
By the way, the most hilarious thing in the world possibly just happened in this Saints-Ravens game. Justin Tucker just missed an extra point to tie it with 24 seconds left.
Wow, that is a mistake.
Like
go for two.
Justin Tucker, the god, just missed.
Just go for two, man. Always go for two.
I honestly can't believe that. I'm kind of annoyed because I'm heavy in DFS today with the Ravens against the Saints passing defense. It's going pretty well. John Brown did well. Joe Flacco did well. But yeah, Justin Tucker, just killing my soul.
I am far away from NFL DFS, but I've been really into soccer DFS lately. It's very fun.
That is.
It's an adventure.
It certainly sounds like an adventure. Let's move on. The next guy here that I have got for us to talk about is I have Tyus Battle next. Like that's where you can see the drop off, right? Like Tyus Battle couldn't get assurances that he was going to be like a top 40 pick in last year's NBA draft. I'll probably have him as like a pretty, I don't know about like a clear first round pick, but like he'll be in my top 30 to enter the year.
Yeah, he is not currently in my top 40. He's the type of player that I just have a hard time buying into. The guy who's kind of high usage, lower efficiency. The one thing that gives me a little bit of pause, I guess, is that I wonder if he played a role closer to what he did as a freshman in the NBA, if that makes more sense for him as an NBA prospect or player. As a college player, though, last year, right, we're talking about someone with a 28% usage rate and just a 52.3 true shooting percentage, which is, like, pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, you bring it up best, though, right? Like, the fact that he had to do that was because they had literally nobody else who could create their own shot.
Right.
So how do you even go about, like, handling that if you're the only guy who can create a shot?
Oh, I'm with you. Like, I think that he likely can create shots and do so at a high clip. It's just a matter of if he will score them efficiently. And the problem is that ever a thing he's going to be doing in the NBA? And I think that my answer to that is probably no, in which case he's, much more like 3-and-D complementary offensive player. And like, I just don't know that he does enough other things in addition to that scoring to really be someone I like as a prospect.
Yeah, there's definitely a big question there to determine what his like ancillary skills are.
Right.
Can he be someone who you can count on to bring other things to the table? At Syracuse, he's not asked to do that. If you go back and like watched him in high school, he was actually like a two-way player. Like he's just not asked to do that at Syracuse. I think that teams that heavily scout like high school basketball and like go back and watch as much tape as they can find and like, look, you'd be surprised how much tape NBA teams can get their hands on now of AAU, like EYBL basketball. So much of it is dependent on what you think of those skills. I am someone who tends to buy into them like as something that you can trust, as something that you can hope will continue to bear themselves out as he works toward being a NBA player. But like, it's no certainty. Like he needs to be able to pass it. Like he was a solid passer in high school. He's never passed the ball at Syracuse like in the last year. So I don't know.
Yeah. I will say the fact that he had a negative assist to turnover ratio last year is like pretty concerning to me.
Yeah, no question. But like, I just don't know what is like. I don't know what is situational and what is like he can't do it.
Sure, that's totally fair, and it's definitely possible he gets on an NBA roster where he gets put into a different situation than he's in now, and really excels in that situation. I just like you said, people are going to have to look back further than what they've seen over the last year to figure that out.
Chris Wilkes is who I have next on my board. I actually probably will have Chris Wilkes a little bit higher than Tyus Battle, now that I think about it. I will have Chris Wilkes as a first-round pick. 6'7", 6'11" wingspan. A little bit more comfortable from mid-range last season than what he was from 3 last season. But the good thing about that is he is a very, very skilled player as a straight line driver who can knock down floaters. He has NBA size. They didn't hate him defensively last season. Like, they thought he was fine defensively, I guess is the way to put it.
Sure.
What are your impressions? We'll just kind of start there.
So I was very into Chris Wilkes at the beginning of last season. I think whatever the first game UCLA played, he was very, very good at. And then some of that shine wore off over the course of the season. Now, I think I am definitely lower on him than you are. I think I am probably a little bit lower on him than consensus. I am concerned about his ability to consistently shoot the 3. He shot 35.2% last season, but was just 65.5% from the free throw line, which is a number that I look to pretty consistently in determining, what the projectability of someone's shooting is. I think he right now is largely a spot-up threat and isn't a great individual creator to this point, but for somebody in this range, that's not necessarily the most important piece of the puzzle. And then I'm looking at defensive metrics as well, which is something I look at pretty consistently, and those numbers are not particularly good for him. I think that you're right that there are some flashes of skill and things like that, but some of the indicators that I look for that suggest to me that a prospect will develop are not really there with him.
So, like Kevin Porter, this is another circumstance where just being out here, I've gotten a chance to get to know him a little bit better as a player. I saw him this summer play pickup over at the UCLA practice gym. And one of the big things that I always talk about is how strength relates to shooting and how muscle memory is incredibly important, and the ability to continue to repeat your mechanics is incredibly important whenever it comes to perimeter shooting. His lower half literally looks twice as big as what it was last year. Like, his calves are so much bigger. His upper legs look a lot stronger. He just looks to be on much more stable grounding than what he was a season ago. And I think that is incredibly important whenever you're talking about a prospect like him. He is someone who is going to have to shoot the ball, and lower half strength is incredibly important when it comes to shooting. If he can even just get slightly more consistency as a shooter, that's critical for his development.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, he was very skinny last year, very slight of frame. And so making developments there obviously is a big plus. Yeah.
Let's see. Who else do we have here? Jarrett Culver is another one that I'll have in the first round. Yeah. As the resident Big 12 guy, I'll let you just take the lead on Jarrett Culver.
Yeah, so another awesome find by Chris Beard, was ranked outside of the top 300 as a high school product, just like Zaire Smith was, but was obviously overshadowed pretty consistently by Zaire last season. Shot 38% from 3 on 150 attempts. I think that there are some reasons to be skeptical about the consistency of that number and how that will fare this year.
Raise his hand immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on that board.
Shot 65% from the free throw line. Now, it's interesting because, Miles Bridges, for example, is a terrible free throw shooter his freshman season, and then obviously improved as a shooter consistently as a sophomore. So maybe that's the outcome for Jarrett Culver, but if he's not a shooter, I think that there are some questions about what else he does offensively in terms of his ability to create. He didn't get very many of those opportunities last season, obviously, because Keenan Evans ate up all of those for Texas Tech. So he has to be able to shoot it, I think. And, with Keenan Evans gone, with Zaire gone, he's going to get more possessions as a creator, and we'll see how that goes. But really the other reason he's up this high is because he seems like a good defender with good defensive instincts, almost 2 steals per 40 minutes, which is a big plus.
Yeah, he definitely defends. That's a great point. He's pretty young for his class as well. He was a February birthday, so he played a lot of last season at 18 years old. I like the defensive ability. Do you think he's 6'5"?
Probably not. Probably more 6'4"-ish. I think he's definitely small for the people we're discussing in this range. Like, he is much more solely shooting guard than wing in my mind.
I'm like very on guard with Texas Tech right now because of the Zaire thing now. Because like Zaire measuring in under 6'3" without shoes on threw me.
Yeah, that was pretty weird.
Yeah, I mean, like,
what do they list Culver as?
6'5".
Yeah, that's ambitious.
He's listed short, like Zaire, I think, was listed at 6'6" last year for them, or 6'5" or something.
I thought he was 6'4".
Yeah,
for Zaire, but yeah.
So like that's a concern. If he's like 6'3",
oh yeah, then it's real tough.
A lot of this falls apart. What do you think of his athleticism?
It's fine. I don't think it's great.
So we have like a maybe shooter, who's like a maybe athlete, who might be 6'3". Who is a good defender.
That sounds right.
Definitely a good defender. I'm skeptical. Like,
I think there's good reason to be skeptical. Like, if you're buying him, it's because the defensive metrics are good and they're there, and you hope that the three-point shot maintains some level of consistency. But realistically, we're talking about a guy who's probably going to be best as a 1-2 defender, and not much more than that. So he's limited for sure.
So, like Charles Matthews, like, let's just move to Charles Matthews next.
Sure.
And like, kind of, because what we're hoping they do is somewhat similar to me. We're hoping that these guys are good defenders who can make shots from distance or at least like create some sort of offense. And
I agree.
Matthews, to me, is immeasurably more so a more projectable defender.
Well, he's certainly, like, he's bigger and he's more athletic, so I agree with that for sure.
And he's like an actually good defender as well. Like, Jarrett's a good defender, but Jarrett is a good team defender. Charles can shut dudes down like ISO on the wing. Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. I think that Charles Matthews is a better athlete, probably a better defender. The obvious knock there is Charles Matthews cannot shoot at all. No, and I don't think he ever will shoot. Like, just
I mean, we're talking about someone who shoots 53% from the foul line for his career, and that is just atrocious.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
I will say this. He shot 32% from three last year.
And he shot way more threes last year than he did the year before. And so there's maybe, like, some reason to think that it'll come around. I'm
not there. I'm not saying that he's probably not a shooter. But, like, I don't know. Like, I think I would probably take him ahead of Jarrett Culver right now.
I would definitely not. Charles Matthews is almost 22. Culver's obviously way younger.
Yeah.
And I think probably shows quite a bit more in terms of shooting projections, and just given how important shooting is, that probably sways me enough. But I do think you're right that Matthews is like a way better individual defender, post good defensive stats in a defense where it's kind of tough to post good defensive stats. And if he does shoot as like a really interesting player, but just like the likelihood of shooting is so low, I think.
Yeah, I think that I'm there with you on like the likelihood of shooting. I am just not sure where that comes in. But he can really defend. He can get out on the break. Someone will take him and hope they can fix him as a shooter.
100%.
And then speaking of another athlete, Dre Foster was someone who was getting potential like late first round buzz before he tore his ACL last season. Ends up tearing his ACL though, misses half of the year essentially. Was on his way to averaging like 13, 6, and 3 at SMU while playing pretty good defense as well. It all depends on how he bounces back from that ACL injury, but he is a player that I think scouts will get down and look at pretty quickly.
I absolutely agree with that. I'm interested to see how he fares when he comes back. It's a nice range we have here of like positionally big guys. Dre Foster's 6'6", 220, NBA athlete, but also has significant shooting questions. He's career 37.4%, but I think that oversells thing given that he's had 2 under 33% seasons and is a career like 60% free throw shooter. So he's going to need to do that, I think, to be a really effective NBA player, but he's certainly somebody people should have an eye on.
Yeah, no question there. Let's kind of buzz through these a little bit quickly because so many of them have questions.
All of them.
Yeah, Nikhil Alexander-Walker was someone who came into college basketball last season. I had him like as a borderline first-round pick. Certainly someone who I thought had potential to go one and done, and then he wasn't able to close games a lot of the time for Virginia Tech because he's just skinny and wasn't able to defend.
Yeah, I think he really suffered from some expectation problems. I think people, when he came into college, viewed him as more of a combo guard who might have the ability to handle the ball some, and he never really had that at Virginia Tech last year, but he was a really effective three-point shooter last season, and I think maybe if he builds out his repertoire as an off-ball player, he's someone who will regain some of that status this year.
Yeah, I agree with that, but the other side of that is that he's not like some insanely good athlete either.
True.
Like he almost, to me, he needs to be either a 40% 3-point shooter or needs to be a like a lead ball handler.
Right. I think that's fair. He was close to 40% 3-point shooter last year, which is why I think that there's some chance that he, rejuvenates that draft stock, but I'm not sure we're going to see the on-ball play that we thought we might.
They gave Rajon Rondo, I'm sorry, because I talked about this on the early part of this podcast with Tony Jones. They gave Rajon Rondo 3 games.
Oh, that's light.
They suspended Rajon Rondo 3 games for spitting in Chris Paul's face.
Yeah. I'm surprised Brandon Ingram's only getting 4 games.
I am surprised Brandon is getting 4 games as well. I thought it would be more. We talked about that in the first part of the podcast.
Yeah, I thought he would get significantly more games than 4 for running in and punching someone and escalating a situation that perhaps had died down a lot.
And if you look, he bumped a referee with his lower half too.
Yeah, that was insane. Why would you ever do that? That's interesting.
What the fuck, guys? NBA, get your shit together. Jalen Hudson, any Jalen Hudson thoughts?
He's fine, but he's going to turn 23 in May, and I think he probably would have been better off if he came out this year and got the clock rolling.
He can shoot it, so that's good.
Definitely.
He has more playmaking ability than he showed at Florida last year, too, I think. At Virginia Tech, you go back and you watch his freshman year tape, he was someone that could actually run pick and rolls and kind of spray out to shooters and stuff like that. He actually was pretty good.
Yeah.
Matisse Thybulle is one of my favorites in this class. I am a rather large Matisse Thybulle fan.
Yeah, I think he's pretty good. 3.7 steals per 40 minutes is an absolutely insane number. And a career 38% three-point shooter definitely fits the mold of the 3-and-D guys. Not necessarily someone who's a high-usage offensive player, but can likely fill a role at the NBA level for sure. You
look at his steal and block rates combined. He had a 4.8 block rate and a 5.2% steal rate.
Yeah.
There's only been one player in the history of Ken Palm's database who has done the 5-5, 5 steal, 5 block rate combination. He has a real shot to do that this year. And then you throw in that he was a 37% 3-point shooter last year, 40% as a sophomore, 37% as a freshman. He is just a consistent 37, 38% 3-point shooter. I think he has a chance to go in the late first round.
I agree with that.
I'm a big Matisse Thybulle guy. Sneaky guy, Kellen Grady. Do you have any Kellen Grady thoughts?
Not a ton. Obviously, someone who can definitely shoot it, both as a spot-up shooter and on pull-ups. I'm really more interested in seeing him against higher-level competition. They play at UNC in December, which will be an interesting test for him.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you look at what he did against Rhode Island last year, which was a good team. He had 17 points against them. Early in the season, he was playing but didn't seem wholly comfortable maybe. He dropped 18 points on 15 shots against North Carolina. Just kind of looking through, he dropped 10 against Nevada, dropped 3 points against Virginia. So there's some... He needs to prove himself against good competition for sure.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's see. Who else do we got here? We've got Zach Norvell. Are you a Zach Norvell guy?
I do like Zach Norvell. I wish he wasn't almost 21 years old as a sophomore, though, but someone who I think is a projectable shooter, who can be a complementary offensive piece. 87th percentile as a pick-and-roll scorer last year. Super efficient around the basket. I think it'll be interesting to see what role he plays on a Gonzaga team that should be like top 5 all year long.
He plays a little bit like a shorter Rodney Hood.
That's an interesting comparison, yeah.
Which is a problem in many ways. But microwave scorer, can really run a pick and roll, really good spot-up shooter as well. Intriguing, at the very least, I would say. Maybe not like some people have him as like a first-round pick right now. I would venture he's more of a 2020 guy to me.
That's fair.
Do you have any thoughts on the Martin twins? Both of them went through the combine process last year. Both decided to return.
I would like to combine the two of them into one player, and then I would feel comfortable with them as an NBA prospect.
Strong agree with that. Cody is a... Which one do you like better, actually? That's a fair point.
God, that's tough. I think maybe just Caleb because he can shoot, and the importance of shooting in the modern NBA is so high. But Cody really kind of outclasses him in every other area.
Yes, I think that's where I'm at on it as well. I think I probably like Cody more, but the fact that Caleb can shoot it is a little bit more projectable. The thing with Cody, though, is that he's a very good defender. I believe he was the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year last year.
That sounds right.
Can run some point guard as well. Can really, really pass it. Can really be a smart, instinctive role player at the next level. Whereas, I wonder if Caleb is more of just like a guy who's a high level lead guard in Europe.
I think that's a reasonable concern to have there.
Fletcher McGee is a senior. He is probably the best shooter in college basketball.
I think almost certainly the best shooter in college basketball. And then after that, who knows?
Yeah. So Fletcher McGee is, let's just call it out. He is exactly what you would expect a white dude named Fletcher McGee to look like on the basketball floor.
Who plays for Wofford.
Who plays for Wofford. Really just an unbelievable shooter. Here are his 3-point percentages. 47.9, 42.3, 43.9. He has taken 800 3-point attempts in his career in 3 years and is shooting 44.3%. He has taken 322 free throw attempts and is shooting 90.7% on those. The other thing is, though, he was a 56.5% 2-point range guy as well.
Yeah.
So he can really, really shoot it. He might be a specialist.
Yeah, definitely. He can score. He can shoot off screens. He can shoot off of pull-ups really efficiently. 89th percentile on 163 screen possessions last year. 95th percentile on 205 pull-ups. So definitely someone who could be a specialist. Obviously, I think there are concerns defensively and NBA-level athleticism and stuff like that. But anytime you can shoot at those rates, you're at least somewhat interesting.
And now that we're talking about the specialists, let's just throw in Desmond Bane as well. Shot 46% from 3 last season, 61% from 2-point range, just kind of getting shots on back cuts and little things like that. 12.5 points a game on a 67% true shooting percentage will get it done.
Absolutely, and has positional size a little bigger than other guys in this range in terms of 6'5", 215 already.
Yeah. Super small wingspan. I think he has a negative wingspan. Very might be the most jacked player we've talked about in this range. Incredibly muscular and strong. Can shoot it though, and is
absolutely, from
all reports, very mature, intelligent human being. Jordan Poole is a player that a lot of people are excited about. Jordan is a really creative scorer that we got to see a little bit of in the NCAA tournament last season, but we haven't seen enough of him yet, I feel like, beyond that, to know what else he can bring to the table yet.
Yeah, definitely somebody I feel comfortable with as a shooter, but only played 12.5 minutes per game last year. I think we're going to need to see a significant uptick there before we can judge him to be a really good NBA prospect.
Resident Big 12 expert Chris Stone, shoot me your thoughts on Kerwin Roach.
One of the best perimeter defenders in the Big 12. He's averaged almost 2 steals per 40 for the rest of his career. Elite level athlete, someone if you hit the YouTubes and search up impressive dunks, you will find a lot of them, but he's likely not much of a shooter. We'll see if that changes in an NBA role where he can play in a spot-up position rather than having to handle as many pick and rolls as he does at Texas.
Well, Gerald Vick, as the resident Kansas fan of this podcast.
almost certainly someone who can shoot it and is a plus athlete, but a mediocre defender. It's worth remembering that there are some personal history questions here. There was a mutual parting of ways in the NBA draft process where it looked like he was 100% going pro. And then it came out that he never hired an agent, and he came back to Kansas. I'll say that from what I've heard from people, it sounds like he's being, really helpful and in good position in terms of kind of doing the right things and rebuilding his image.
Herb Jones is a player who got a lot of attention last season for his defensive prowess against Trae Young. I'm a little bit more skeptical of him as a 2019 prospect than what I think some people are, but give me your thoughts.
Athletic, good defender, maybe one of the worst offensive wing players in the class.
Yes, I would say
probably
that,
actually just the worst.
Yeah, out of the players we've talked about so far, like he is very clearly in a class of his own as just not an offensive player yet, like in any way.
A 25% turnover rate and a 45% true shooting percentage.
That's what we're looking for, man. But he is genuinely a very good defender, very athletic, has the frame that people look for. If he can add to that offensive game, people will get excited about him very, very quickly.
Absolutely.
Josh Reeves is someone who's long been discussed on this podcast. Shout out Coleswicker, who loves Josh Reeves like another small child of his. I'm a big Josh Reeves guy. I've talked to Josh. He's a very kind person that I really enjoyed speaking with. Seems to be pretty mature, as well as the fact that he is an awesome defender. He's just an awesome defensive basketball player.
Yeah, really, really good defender. Maybe the most interesting thing is I think at Big Ten Media Days, he said he wants to take Tony Carr's creation possessions, which would be a big step for him. 39 pick-and-roll possessions last year, 8 isolation possessions, 1 post-up. So mostly has been a spot-up guy. If he can show that he can create a little bit of offense, his draft stock will rise considerably.
If he can show he can create offense, he has a chance to go in the first round.
Absolutely.
The problem right now with him is I don't think he's shown enough offensively, and I don't think he's shown enough in terms of his consistent shooting ability.
I agree with that.
Anyone else here that we maybe have to mention? Like, should we mention Herb Jones's teammate John Petty?
I mean, we can. Like, there are other guys, John Petty, TJ Gibbs, Xavier Sneed. I think one of the things people perhaps should take away from this podcast at the top is that we've talked a lot about how the 2019 draft is not very good. But if there is one thing that's kind of a savior for this class, I think that it does potentially have the ability to have a deep group of wings, which is obviously super important for an NBA that puts a premium on that position.
Yeah, I agree with that. Xavier Sneed is another guy we haven't talked about at Kansas State. John Concher at Fort Wayne. John Concher probably throws you way off, I would imagine, right?
No, I know John Concher.
Well, I know you know him. I'm saying, like, you look at what his, like...
No, he can really shoot it.
3-point percentages are versus free throw percentages.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Those just make no sense. 43% three-point shooter, 69% free throw shooter. Sure.
Yeah, and, like, it's not a small number of three-point attempts. Like, he's shot 300-plus three-point attempts in his career and 300-plus free throw attempts in his career, and it's all off. Really underrated passer as well. Very, very good playmaker. I think he's a pretty good defender, too, at 6'5". He actually is someone I'm interested in and think could establish himself as a draft prospect this season. James Palmer is someone we should also mention at Nebraska. Was first team All Big Ten last season, has a very, very good frame at 6'5" with about a 7-foot wingspan, dropped 17 points and 3 assists a game. He's got to shoot it, though. 27% from 3 in 2016, 31% from 3 last season.
That is exactly my thought. Has to shoot it before I'm super interested.
I don't know. There can't be anyone else, can there?
Max Strus, if you think of him in this range.
Yes. This podcast, we have a let's talk about Boban section when we talk about the NBA. We might have a let's talk about Max Strus section when we talk about the NBA draft, because Max Strus, oh man, if there is any player that has zero conscience in regard to shot selection in college basketball, it is that man, and I love it.
Yeah, he's super wonderful to watch, and maybe is an NBA prospect. So.
Oh wow. So 22 seconds ago, Jonte Porter will miss the season with a torn ACL and MCL in his right knee.
Boy, that's really bad. That's brutal, man. Jonte is, I think, in my mind, was the best returning prospect in this class, and someone who I think, could be a really good offensive center at the next season. That's tough.
That's so brutal.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I don't know if he goes in the first round, but I think there's a reasonable chance if he would have stayed in the draft, he would have went in the first round last year.
Yeah, that sucks so much.
And he's someone who, has a bigger frame, so he's going to have to really focus in on, not ballooning up in terms of weight while he, goes through his recovery. And he needs to keep the athleticism that he has, as he continues to recover and rehabilitate from this injury. He can't lose any step. That's tough. That's real tough.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Just brutal.
Get well soon, Jonte. I would imagine that he's now a 2020 draft prospect.
That sounds right to me.
That's sick. That's sick.
Yeah.
Chris, tell the people where they can find your work.
They can find my work at Sporting News. I just dropped a big board last week with now a number 8 prospect who we'll be looking at next year again, it seems like.
Yeah, that's tough.
That's tough.
We'll talk about Jonte at some point in the next couple of weeks because, I guess he still is a draft prospect theoretically. He's draft eligible. We'll talk about what he does well, but this podcast seems to be more for wings. I wrote about the new G League Select contracts over at The Athletic on Thursday. Did I publish it Thursday or Friday? Maybe Friday I published it. Kind of came up with a plan for how to make them successful. What else did I do? Man, that is a bummer. That Jonte
It's a real bummer.
That really sucks.
Yeah, really sucks.
I'm going to have someone on the podcast at some point this week, maybe toward the end of the week, to come on and talk about that with me, the G League Select contracts, because he'll look at it from a little bit different of a perspective than I do. We're going to have a little discussion about it. Someone I should have had on the podcast a long time ago. In terms of other stuff, I'll have a big board coming up at The Athletic at some point in the next couple of weeks. God damn it. That is a bummer, man. What a terrible way to end the podcast.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh man, that sucks. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Go rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Really, people complain about the fact that I'm very critical about prospects, but I really do hate it when this shit happens. I genuinely don't want to see guys get hurt because look, so now we're talking about a Porter family here who we don't know if Mike, a year ago was expecting that they would be 300 millionaires given what Michael's history as a basketball player and skill level had been. And then we don't know what the hell is going to happen with his career. We don't know what the hell now is going to happen with Jonte. It just sucks.
It super sucks.
Yeah, that's tough. Go rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast over on iTunes. Go rate, review, and subscribe to it on Spotify now. It's up on Spotify, Google Play, Android, wherever you're listening, Pocket Casts. We're up on a wide variety of platforms now. Until next time, though, we'll talk soon.